and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program mega worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to the show, everybody. It just seems like if you were just if you opened every window on your house some weeks, and there was just a giant flat screen put out there with the news on it, you would think that at every moment of every second that there was a giant asteroid headed towards Earth, and that we are, spiraling downward into ever and ever clearer madness, and the world's on fire, and every time you open the drapes, it'd be like, bah! And you just slam the drapes again. And I see this all over the socials and the medias especially when something awful happens. Now, the Oxford shooting in Michigan, which I don't know how we're going to refer to it, the Crumbly shooting, it's just the habitual nature of the news to focus on who did it and not the victims, as if there was a reason behind it. There's a mixture of I guess this is the conundrum. And Johnny Million, I'm sure you have some sort of you're flipping through the channels in your normal aspect of life, and then, oh no. And while America does have its outsized number of shootings and, extrajudicial citizen on citizen killings when it comes to this, and the numbers have certainly gone up as far as mass shootings since we dropped the number from 5 to 3. Now, for 3 people or more shot in something is now a mass shooting, regardless of the circumstance. So it's kind of skewed the numbers, because when most people think of a mass shooting, what we're often referring to is not like inter-gang violence like we see in Chicago, or personal grudges between people, or even, to some degree, the horrifying domestic violence shootings we see in a workplace, where someone comes in and kills their husband or wife, in a domestic violence conflict that spreads out into the greater world. Doesn't happen in the home, right? Most of us are thinking of things like Sandy Hook and the Oxford, Michigan shooting, and workplace semi-random, what we used to call back in the day, quite frankly, going postal. If you recall, when we were growing up, that was the standard. It was so ubiquitous as a circumstance that it got that nickname. It was frequent enough that it got its own.
About that.
Like hashtag going postal before hashtags actually existed. That was our shorthand growing up for a mass shooting, because that's where they happened most often.
Yeah, somebody snapped.
That's right. And it was very frequently a postal worker. It was very, at least in our experience of it, because the human brain seeks patterns, and in seeking those patterns, we will find them whether they exist or not. And if something does create a category, which I would say the going postal expression came from a category, not a pattern. Pattern would be like a serial killer, where someone went to each of these places individually, instead of these individuals that seem to work in these places have these issues. They're not coordinated. They weren't all on a bulletin board. They weren't all on social media coordinating this. Or indeed, which brings us to today's conversation in some of these ways, texting about it. Or there was forewarning of it. Because a lot of these things back pre-social media, there was no warning ahead of time. I mean, maybe occasionally you would have somebody call in a bomb threat kind of a thing. When, any kid who's been in high school. I mean, John and I we were at New Trier when Lori Dan happened.
Yeah, I think about that from time to time.
Yeah, and they locked down the school, and the story on campus was that she was walking our way. Remember that? And she was coming down Green Bay Road or something. I mean, the story shifted all the time because nobody really knew. And there certainly wasn't this like phone tree of texting that goes on in these circumstances. We were way in the dark back then. And maybe blissfully so. You know what I mean? Maybe the lack of information, softened the blow a little bit for us. Although you and I regularly, I mean, that's still there. I mean, I still remember that moment as a teenager going, wait, there's a who coming where now? This way. Where do we go? What do we do? No one can stop her. Where is this person? She did what? And that was, not the only circumstance that happened on, in the school system around us when we were coming up by any stretch, but there was no kind of like methodology in place to deal with it. And there is now, in the Oxford, Michigan shooting, as soon as it happened, the students went into effectively lockdown. The shooter was literally going door to door trying to get a couple of the doors open, but everybody had moved back, locked the door, remained quiet, sat in the back of the space. Like there was some barricading going on, but there was a strategy in place to deal with the common aspect of these things. And there's a habitual reflex in the American psyche, over the last few years especially, to somehow jump to your solution of choice and go, this should be solved this way. And some of them work, some of them do not. And one of the things that stands out about this one, especially the fact that the parents of this kid have been arrested. They have been arraigned in court in Detroit. The mother was crying.
Oh, she was sad?
About being caught.
Right.
And these folks, she had, it's fairly well publicized at this point that she had wrote a open letter to Trump essentially on Facebook thanking him for protecting the Second Amendment, and that the gun used in this was a Black Friday purchase that the father had made, because nothing says, Christmas and a good
Merry Christmas. Here's your Beretta.
Yeah, Sig Sauers are the reason for the season, apparently, in this house. And the nature of the fact that these guys think he called it his new beauty. He posted a picture of the gun on his Instagram, and this sort of
very happy.
Yes, the rise of the amosexuals over the last couple of years, and the people who are, well, let me put it this way. Guns, I think I saw it, like one of the guys, there's always this back and forth on it. As soon as, remember, there was also this habit, the NRA's kind of in hiding a little bit, in that they normally, after a school shooting, up till about 2 years ago, before we found out that they were, diverting funds to pay for fur coats for, the leadership or what have you, and yachts and whatnot. Every time there was a school shooting, they would just have a gun show. They would just schedule a gun show within 15 miles of where it happened, as kind of a reminder about the positivity and the fact that they knew that there would be people who were afraid they were going to be on the receiving end of a copycat or another shooter, or just become aware that they were unarmed in an armed situation, that maybe they're going to want to, there's an audience for this. You could sell guns right now because people are freaked out and traumatized. And some of them are going to think the missing link in this circumstance was that they were unarmed, and if this had happened near them, they might have gotten shot and not been able to respond. So they have these gun shows. And there was, I think it was Steven Crowder or somebody like that was doing one of these, like almost like the quicker responses was, I'm pro-gun, change my mind, that nonsense. And my response, sort of emotionally, intellectually, immediately, besides gross, was that no one need be should be, or certainly anybody who views themselves as a Christian or with any deep spiritual beliefs in that regard, should, which he does, should view themselves as pro-gun. Guns are, in some cases, a necessary evil. That's the best thing you can say about a gun. They're not toys. They're not like sexy and fun, which is how these folks thought of them. They are, at best, a necessary evil. The greatest function a gun can serve for a non-criminal is the worst day of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And a scar that you will carry with you, even if you use it in the right, for the rest of your life. They are awful machines. They are, in deference to our friends in Texas, portable abortion clinics, where you can prematurely end a life based on your own judgment in any circumstance. If, you know, for all this speak about the Texas abortion laws that we've heard, if you are decrying a woman having an abortion because she cannot afford to have another child, and yet you feel completely justified in shooting someone who might rob you because you can't afford to part with your wallet and be bothered to go to the DMV and get a new ID, what's the difference? You are aborting a life for your own financial well-being. Is that not exactly what you decry the behavior of? Why should you have the right to do that if you allege that that's what she's doing? Or to save your own life, for that matter. In the Texas law, doesn't matter if you're trying to save your own life. If you have a therapeutic abortion and you're going to die, and even the child that you are having, in this circumstance, will not survive outside the womb, you're supposed to go down with the ship, according to these folks. Well, why doesn't that apply to you and a gun? If you think your life is in danger, why should you have the right to abort another life? And this one's, they're not even debatable about whether or not it's got a heartbeat. You know they are. They're yelling at you. They're standing there themselves, threatening you with a knife or a stick or another gun or what have you. And they're going to take your life. Why should you have the right? In this theory, in this abortion law theory that they're floating around the Supreme Court right now, why should you be able to whip out your little Lauren Boebert special and abort a life to save your own? Right. It's a super, 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 super late term abortion. And there obviously is this mix of thought. It is the logic Gordian knot that these people find themselves in. And it is just that kind of twisted thought and lack of recognition of their own hypocrisy that creates the crumbly parents of the world. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what I think could actually be a solution in this situation. A law you could pass that more than likely could get a majority in many states, even amongst the Second Amendment, amosexuals. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We're here every Saturday in your mornings. If you're, unless you're spread out all over the world, in which case, whatever time you watch this, welcome. Hi. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back right after this.
It's time! It's time! Guess who's back? Back again.
Hal Sparks.
Back. Tell a friend.
You want to get sued? So yeah, Hal Sparks is back, y'all.
I love him!
I'm Art.
I'm Bobby.
The host of Where Are They Now? Now let's get back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Hey, listen.
Welcome back, everybody. So, this, the crumbly parents are apparently taking a cue from the fugitive dude who killed his girlfriend, the YouTubers that happened.
The TikTok couple.
Oh, folks, the importance of seeing a trial and being aware of the contents and and knowing what's going on is a crucial part of our judicial system on a baseline, but on a sort of C-SPAN level, not on a must-see TV level. And what's happened with things like the Rittenhouse trial and the Ahmaud Arbery trial, and to some degree, what's happening with Smollett and these folks and the dude who was on the run who ended up doing himself in Florida, who had killed his girlfriend, the YouTubers. There is almost a tack now that people are taking that is right out of the sort of the Trump playbook, which is more attention is better. Push back, default to this sort of Steve Bannon, just lie louder, just lie all the time, never stop. It's the Roger Stoning of the defense in more of the most horrifying cases in modern American legal systems. And it's no different when, these folks in particular who were just arraigned and are now, weeping during their arraignment, or been charged with involuntary manslaughter for basically knowing that their son was having a breakdown, was having homicidal thoughts, had the gun. The mother found the gun missing, and just missing. It's not locked up. Didn't have a trigger lock on it. The ammo wasn't stored separately. It was just in the dresser drawer, I guess, or something. And she texted him. The weird thing is that news alerts had gone out about the shooting, and that's when the father went home to look for his gun, like they just knew. And the mother had texted, "Ethan, don't do it." And it was already happening.
Oh my God, for real?
Yeah. And then he called 911. The father called 911 and said his son might be the shooter. Could be. Well, was. Already had. The story of this woman writing a note to Trump, essentially thanking him for protecting the Second Amendment, which, by the way, Trump isn't a shooter, can't shoot, has always had a body man or a bodyguard around him, doesn't care. I mean, like the guy who, his personal bodyguard, who's a creep who may be in his own legal trouble post-Trump presidency, is the guy who carries the gun, in the same way that Trump looks as sort of like a violence chauffeur. He just has these danglers that deal with the parts of life that, he doesn't want to have to be bothered with. So he doesn't drive anything but a golf cart. And for being all pro-Second Amendment, can't shoot, won't shoot, never seen him anywhere near it. It's the weirdest thing. For all the politicians on the right that do all this posturing, the Lauren Boeberts and the MTGs of the world that basically use guns as Christmas decorations, which is like that in and of itself is a conversation that needs to be had. One of the things that comes out of this is absolutely that these folks and the folks around them and the supporters of these, of this side of the aisle's argument do not view guns as serious in any form. They do not look at them as serious weapons or a serious endeavor. They are toys. They are viewed as toys. They are sometimes used as a flag. Like you just show this like you'd show a flag. Like there's an AR-15 is sort of indistinguishable in those folks, with a rebel flag, a Trump flag, or a Blue Lives Matter flag, which apparently they will use to beat up a cop if that cop is trying to just carry out the regular law. That said, these folks also fall into, and the neighborhood around this school sort of falls into this prepper doomsday attitude. And that this end of the world nonsense that is a constant foray in the news absolutely has a trickle-down effect. When you do not report reality on the scale of reality, and you do it with such wanton disregard for reality all the time, what you put in position is that the weaker among us as adults, and certainly children, are going to think the end of the world is coming all the time. And we dealt with kids like that when we were in school, and it's just kind of extrapolated sort of post 24-hour news cycle into something, a greater version of that very thing. It's a percentulation rise mixed with the availability of the message is a terrible soup to create people who think the end is nigh all the time. And there has to be some kind of pushback on this.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now with merch, if you go to our YouTube channel, infotainmentwars.com, or if you go to twitch.tv/HalSparks and subscribe, please. There's merch available in both places. So if you feel like a holiday gift thing, see, look at me, I'm being all professional about it and stuff. I made notes for myself.
Plugging yourself.
Do it. I know, it's right. Okay,
You're like a
so
hustler.
the fact that the parents are being charged in this circumstance is a great leap forward. And you start factoring this in where parents, have to consider the dangerous implications of giving an immature person access to a gun because everybody else does. That's why you can't join the military until you're 18 without, I guess, parental permission at 17. And even then you can't carry a gun on base unless you're using it for a specific purpose. They know better. They know that folks come in not mature enough to know how to handle these things. Like, and there's all kinds of rules about guns and whatnot, basic. They're locked up. The military knows how serious these are. Where you got these parents who are like buying them like they're, like they're a wreath or something that they're gonna hang. And these folks, the kid has pleaded not guilty to all the charges, probably on either on insanity or mental incompetence or something. I haven't been able to find out like the pure reason why they're doing it, just that what their defense is ultimately going to be. And it's completely believable considering that he's not healthy and that he does have mental issues, especially considering A, who raised him, and B, how the school and counselors were reacting to this kid. There's another issue entirely about this pushback against kids who, initially we had this zero tolerance gun policy, this zero tolerance threat policy, post 9/11, remember that? And now it was seen as too draconian. And so they have it's better to just get him back in class policy. And so this kid was just, they met with his parents that morning. And now it turns out that not only the parents might get charged, but somebody else helped them hide, and that person might get charged. They were hiding.
Hide the parents?
Yes, they were hiding in a warehouse, and they parked the car that everybody was looking for in a parking space for the warehouse. I'm just saying, future fugitives of America, it's not going to hurt you to walk a block. Sorry. And they parked it right in front of the place, and people spotted it, and then they were captured. But somebody let them into the building. So whoever that is was aiding and abetting a fugitive, knew full well they were doing it because it was all over the news. There was a bolo out for them. It was on the news in the area. There's no way people didn't know. Now, in many ways, this like I said, this falls into, in some ways, closer to the Sandy Hook shooting, as far as the events leading up to it, that this sort of prepper mentality and this doom and gloom ideology that, you just feel the Great War is coming, so we're all getting ready for it. And then it never comes. And then these idiots start using the guns that they are buying for the Great Day of the Rope or whatever, Klan adjacent BS that they're attaching themselves to about how the rebellion will occur. that in the process of that, it doesn't happen, and then it starts becoming a hobby, and then all guard is dropped. Right. I mean, when every mega church station you can watch is selling prepper food, Jim Bakker sells. I mean, his primary way of making money, other than people sending in prayer requests, is giant tubs of pancake batter and beans and stuff that you hide in your bunker. That speaks to a specific illness that none of us need to contribute to. And I've been on this kick lately on my live stream about letting everybody know the world is not going to end anytime soon. I'm sorry. Bless you. And Johnny sneezed, but he covered himself.
I'm muted.
He even follows COVID protocols when he's alone in his office live streaming with me from another city.
Truth.
But one of the side effects, the contraindications to this constant doom and gloom, is that folks like this will prioritize and turn the end of the world into a pastime. And, they may know better when they hold up a gun and say, this is my new beauty, to other people in their chat groups and their QAnon crowds, that gather in the Craigslist corners of the internet. They might kind of know they're doing it with a wink and a nod. You know what I mean? They planned on going to work tomorrow, the day their kid shot up place. The dad was, I think, at work when it happened. The end of the world, everybody, all these folks who are decrying the end of the world and civilization, you're going to need a gun for, the Walking Dead moment that you're going to wake up one day and the streets are going to be, overrun. And but they're just they just walk through it. No, you can't really believe those. It's kind of like the QAnon, pedophile cabal idea. At a certain point, if you believe that, some of these folks, if they really believe it, are going to have to take up arms in their own head, because you can't just let something that awful slide. Even though 80 to 90% of the people who play footsie with this stuff, you can tell it's terrible, but they're not going to not go to Starbucks that afternoon. They're not going to not shop for Christmas gifts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. While a lizard cabal of adrenochrome drinking pedophiles are running the whole earth. Yeah, but I need new socks. You know what I mean? There's this disconnect. And in the case of folks like this, what you have is the trickle down on this is he wasn't the only kid decrying doom and gloom. There was this culture at the school. There's this weird story about one of the kids there throwing a deer head on the lawn, and there were death threats going around, and this happens because the parents in an area like this are spending all their time, chit-chatting about the end of the world and shrugging it off at the same time. It's its own form of mental illness, and it affects children. This kid is a minor. This kid was losing it mentally, and the parents were just kind of like, now. His mother literally
get you a weapon that can separate you from intense violence.
That's right. And then,
because if you have to go wrestle all those people down to the ground and stab them, it would be it would play out very differently.
Yes, it would. Yeah. As much as we talk about knives knives are deadly, but nobody a block and a half away from a knife fight has ever been shot through their cereal bowl with the blade. You know what I mean? There are very few in these circumstances, and they do happen. We just had in the United States, a random stabbing. I think it was in New York City. This crazy guy killed a Columbia student in New York, stabbed an Italian tourist, and was caught later on. That would have been so much worse if that guy had access to a rifle with 30 round magazines duct taped together, and nobody, because of the amosexual movement, could have walked up to him and gone, "Hey, buddy, what's the deal? Where are you going?" You don't have the right to ask me that. I can walk anywhere I want with this thing. I can walk right up to the door of this school carrying this thing, and you can't even ask me where I'm going or if I have a right to be here until the first bullet flies. And that is ultimately what the right-wing message machine around guns has been asking for this whole time. They, the self-defense nature of it, or the right to carry openly, or all that kind of stuff. What it ultimately is asking for is that anybody with ill intent can go unmolested right up to the chest of the person they want to harm, and you can't do anything about it until they open fire. And the idea that you would want to live in a society where, basically the worst among us can station themselves for a slaughter before anybody can even go, hey, buddy, what's, any reason you need to be walking around with a gun? We're all trying to, there's kids across the street eating cornflakes. We're all playing soccer. What's your problem? I got a right to do this. Yeah, you have a right to have intercourse as well. You can't do it in the park, though. Can you please go away? That's the issue. That's ultimately, what are you fighting for? And again, like I said, I am not anti-gun in that regard. I just view guns as what they are. A necessary evil that's far less necessary than the crumblies of the world would like you to believe. All right. Now, when we come back on a slightly lighter note, some relatively local Chicago news that became international and has some hilarious aspects to it. So we kind of need an emotional break, I think, a little bit from the things of the world that are occurring that we can have no material impact on, except for my idea about expanding the law of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. I would consider opening fire on his fellow students the act of a delinquent, juvenile delinquent. And therefore, if you aid and abetted any of that, knowing full well that this person was not mature enough to handle this idea, if you knew there was a kid in your home who was having mental issues, who was flipping out about things, was having anger issues, and you don't lock up your gun, knowing who else lives there, we're not talking about a kid who nobody saw it coming. Everybody did. And so if you saw it coming and you didn't do anything, welcome to involuntary manslaughter. Welcome to contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and aiding and abetting in a murderous felony, which should be another aspect of this. You buy the gun used by an immature person, a child, to kill another human being in any other circumstance in self-defense, you're going to ride out the sentence with them in a grown-up jail. We'll be back right after this.